Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail, the realm where the shadows whisper ancient secrets and nightmares come to life. I am your guide through the darkness, and on this channel, we delve into the spine-chilling world of Wendigo horror stories that will send shivers down your spine. First story by you/Fallout Man. Wendigos, are they real? I'm Max, a guy who doesn't buy into all that supernatural jazz. My journey across Canada was a quest for serenity, a break from the chaos of the city. But fate had its own plans. I met Sarah on the road to the nearest town bordering the eerie Canadian forest. She's got this easygoing charm, a natural warmth that makes you feel like you've known her for ages. An artist by passion and an adventurer at heart, she seemed to find magic in every little thing. Our drive was smooth until we decided to take a less-traveled shortcut through the woods. Sarah was brimming with enthusiasm, pointing out every scenic spot and sharing quirky tales about the area. Then, as if the woods were playing a prank on us, my car decided it needed a break. With a splutter and a groan, it called it quits right in the middle of nowhere. Sarah handled the situation with her trademark grace, cracking jokes about forest spirits playing car pranks. Her laughter was a comforting melody amidst the encroaching dusk, especially as the sun dipped, casting strange shadows in the woods. "I guess we're camping here tonight," I said, trying to sound cool, but my mind was racing, recalling those spine-tingling stories about these woods. "Looks like an impromptu forest sleepover," Sarah quipped, her eyes twinkling with adventure. As twilight descended upon us, a mix of apprehension and curiosity settled in. Little did I know, that night in the woods was just the beginning of an extraordinary and unpredictable escapade. As the night wore on, the forest seemed to come alive in ways I couldn't comprehend. Sarah and I sat close, huddled by the dim light cast by the car, our minds grappling with the inexplicable silence that enveloped us. "I've heard tales about these woods," Sarah began softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Whispers of ancient spirits, Wendigos lurking in the shadows, hungry for lost souls." My skepticism battled with a growing sense of unease. "You don't really believe in that stuff, do you?" I questioned, my voice tinged with a hint of disbelief. Sarah's gaze turned distant, as if she was peering into a realm beyond our understanding. "There are things in this world, Max, things that defy logic and reason. Stories passed down through generations often carry fragments of truth," she murmured, her words hanging heavy in the still night air. The forest remained shrouded in an eerie quietude, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. I strained my ears, trying to decipher the cryptic language of the woods. Then, a chilling sound echoed through the night, a haunting, indescribable howl that seemed to emanate from the heart of the forest. Sarah's grip on my hand tightened, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and uncertainty. "Tell me that's just an animal," I whispered, my voice betraying a trace of dread. But Sarah remained silent, her gaze fixed on the darkness beyond our refuge. It was as though the forest itself held its breath, acknowledging the presence of something otherworldly. As the night wore on, sleep eluded us, the air thick with anticipation and an unspoken understanding that we were not alone in these woods. The paranormal tales I once scoffed at now hovered at the edge of my consciousness, leaving me to grapple with the inexplicable and the unknown. The night stretched endlessly, an unyielding embrace of mystery and foreboding. Little did I know, the secrets these woods held were far more profound and unsettling than anything I had ever imagined. Nightfall enveloped us, every shadow seemed to harbor a secret, and each whisper of the wind fueled the tension that had settled between Sarah and me. We stayed alert, our senses heightened, listening to every crack and rustle in our surroundings. Suddenly, a sound shattered the stillness. A branch snapping. We exchanged concerned glances, our hearts pounding in unison in the darkness. Fears of the unknown hijacked our imaginations. Then, emerging from the shadows, a figure appeared. With cautious steps, it drew nearer to us. The atmosphere became stifling, filled with an expectant silence. As it approached, the moonlight revealed its identity, a dog. Not just any dog, it wore a handmade collar woven with tiny bones, emitting an unsettling yet intriguing aura. That's the dog I saw on the wanted posters in the town, murmured Sarah, her voice a mix of relief and surprise. The canine drew closer, its eyes expressing gratitude and a peculiar kind of camaraderie, as if it knew us somehow. Despite the eerie collar, its gaze conveyed a sense of calmness, as if reassuring us that we were safe. The tension gradually dissipated as the dog settled by our feet, seeking refuge and protection. Though its initial presence had enshrouded us in mysterious suspense, we now felt a sense of relief, realizing that perhaps the only being lurking in these woods was this faithful companion. We stood there, in the stillness of the night, the dog at our side, gazing at the stars as uncertainty gave way to a sense of connection with this creature who, somehow, had found its way to us amidst the darkness. With the dog nestled by our side, a calm settled over us. Sarah and I found ourselves drawn into a conversation that delved beyond the surface, revealing aspects of ourselves we hadn't shared before. "You strike me as someone who loves a good challenge," Sarah remarked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between us. I chuckled softly. "Guilty as charged. I tend to dive headfirst into things, seeking that thrill of the unknown." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "I've always been drawn to art, to stories that breathe life into the mundane. They help me see beyond what's visible, finding beauty in the unnoticed." Her words resonated with me, drawing a parallel to my own quest for the extraordinary. "I get that," I replied. "Sometimes, the world's magic lies in the smallest details, the stories waiting to be told." As our conversation meandered through our passions and quirks, the tension of the night seemed to dissipate, replaced by a genuine connection. We shared stories of childhood adventures, dreams we harbored, and fears we kept hidden. "So, what brings you to these parts?" I finally asked, curiosity nudging me to uncover more about her. Sarah smiled softly. "I seek inspiration in the unexplored. There's an energy here, a mystique that whispers tales waiting to be painted." Her words stirred something within me, a longing for a deeper connection with the world around me. "I guess we're not that different," I admitted. I embarked on this journey to find a piece of myself I felt was missing. As the night wore on, our conversation flowed effortlessly, each revelation strengthening the bond between us. With the dog as our silent companion, we found solace in the shared tales of our lives, unveiling layers of our personalities under the starlit sky. The night wrapped us in an eerie calmness. Sarah and I were engrossed in our conversation when the forest fell into an unsettling stillness. I shivered, an inexplicable unease settling in my bones. "You know, when a forest goes silent, it's rarely a good sign," I muttered, an involuntary chill creeping down my spine. It was a truth I'd learned in my wilderness treks, a silence like this hinted at lurking danger. Before Sarah could respond, a deafening, inhuman cry pierced the silence. The dog bolted, its fur bristling as it dashed towards the source of the sound, disappearing into the dense woods. "What in the world was that?" Sarah gasped, her eyes wide with alarm. "Maybe an elk or something else," I replied, trying to mask my own unease with rationality. But deep down, I knew that sound didn't belong to any forest creature I'd ever encountered. Instinct kicked in, adrenaline surging through me as we chased after the dog, our footsteps pounding against the forest floor. The darkness seemed to swallow us whole as we ventured deeper into the woods. Each step echoed with an unspoken fear, the rustling leaves and cracking branches around us a haunting symphony. "Where did he go?" Sarah's voice trembled, panic lacing her words. "I don't know, but we need to find him," I urged, my heart racing with a mix of worry and foreboding. As we pushed deeper into the forest's heart, an ominous realization gripped us. Something beyond the ordinary lurked within these woods. We plunged deeper into the darkened woods, our frantic calls for the dog met with a haunting silence. The air hung heavy with tension, every step echoing our growing apprehension. Then, amidst the oppressive silence, a thunderous rhythm of galloping footsteps thundered toward us. Panic surged through me, primal instincts kicking in. "Run!" I shouted to Sarah, the urgency in my voice betraying the fear clawing at my insides. Our feet pounded against the forest floor, a cacophony of terror-fueled steps. The thundering sound seemed to gain on us, getting closer with each passing moment. But in that panicked sprint, I stumbled, my foot catching on a protruding root. I pitched forward, the ground rushing up to meet me. A sickening crack echoed through the woods as my head connected with an unforgiving rock, and darkness enveloped me. The last thing I remember is a flurry of movement, Sarah's voice calling out my name in desperation, and the thundering gallops fading into an ominous silence as everything went black. A faint, distant murmur pulled me from the abyss of unconsciousness. My eyes blinked open to a world draped in shadowy hues. Panic surged as I sat up, the dry crust of blood on my forehead sending shivers down my spine. The forest lay before me, desolate and eerily silent. "Sarah?" I called out, my voice barely a whisper in the vastness of the woods. No response. No signs of the faithful canine companion either. A feeble light filtered through the dense canopy, casting a muted glow. Had dawn broken? No, it hadn't. I realized with a sinking feeling that I'd been unconscious for almost a day. Hours remained until the onset of another night, another cycle of darkness. Fumbling to my feet, a disorienting wave of dizziness swept over me. The world spun as I steadied myself against a nearby tree, a pounding headache pulsating in tandem with my racing heart. I frantically searched for any signs of Sarah, any clue about what had transpired in my absence. But the woods held on to their secrets, whispering nothing but an ominous quietude. Gritting my teeth against the fear threatening to overwhelm me, I knew I had to find her, find some semblance of answers before the shroud of night descended once more. The forest stood poised in a liminal state, caught between the fading remnants of the night and the impending darkness. And in this eerie in-between, I stood alone, with the chilling realization that the mysteries of these woods had only just begun to unfold. Staggering through the silent woods, I felt the weight of impending darkness bearing down on me. The hours had slipped away, leaving behind an ominous hush that settled over the trees like a heavy shroud. I stumbled forward, each step an arduous effort as I fought against both physical and emotional exhaustion. Fear and a desperate need to find Sarah surged within me, propelling me deeper into the heart of the woods. Then, amidst the suffocating quietude, a distant echo caught my attention. A soft whimper, almost imperceptible. My heart skipped a beat. Was it the dog? Could it be Sarah? Driven by hope, I followed the sound, branches clawing at me as I pushed through the dense underbrush. The fleeting light dimmed further, a foreboding chill seeping into the air. As I advanced, the faint glimmer of the moon illuminated a figure lying on the forest floor. Relief washed over me as I recognized Sarah's silhouette, curled up beneath the canopy of trees. "Sarah!" I called out, my voice trembling with a mix of worry and relief. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open, but something seemed amiss. "Max? What happened?" Her voice was weak, tinged with confusion. I knelt beside her, my heart pounding with a whirlwind of emotions. "I don't know. We got separated, I fell and then I woke up alone." A fleeting sense of safety washed over us, finding solace in each other's presence in the heart of this enigmatic forest. Yet, as the last traces of light faded from the sky, the encroaching darkness whispered of untold dangers, reminding us that the night held secrets we were yet to uncover. The chill of the night wrapped around us, a constant reminder of the lurking mysteries in these woods. Sarah and I huddled together, seeking warmth and reassurance amidst the encroaching darkness. But as the night wore on, a persistent unease settled within me, a gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. A sharp pang sliced through my temples, a sudden, intense pain seizing my senses. I winced, gripping my head, trying to ward off the crippling ache. It felt as though my skull was splitting apart, a relentless assault on my senses. I collapsed to the forest floor, the pain overwhelming any coherent thought. Darkness encroached at the edges of my vision, threatening to pull me under. With a desperate gasp, I fought against the encroaching unconsciousness. When I finally awoke, it was to a world cloaked in the eerie glow of midnight. Confusion clouded my mind as I tried to piece together the events. But as awareness flooded back, a stark realization struck me with chilling clarity: I wasn't with Sarah. Instead, the loyal canine companion lay beside me, its gentle eyes peering at me with a mix of concern and familiarity. Panic surged through me as I struggled to comprehend the twisted reality. My mind had played a cruel trick, conjuring a false narrative amidst the chaos of the head injury. I had mistaken the dog for Sarah in my delirium. Frantic and disoriented, I called out for Sarah, the echoes of my voice swallowed by the silent expanse of the woods. But there was no response, no trace of her amidst the shadows that stretched across the forest floor. Reality crashed down upon me like a relentless wave. The impact had not only disoriented me physically but had shattered the fragile illusion of safety and companionship in this desolate place. I was alone, lost in a realm of uncertainty and unforeseen dangers. Gathering my scattered thoughts, I tried to retrace my steps, to make sense of the fragmented memories and the ominous events that had unfolded. The dog stayed by my side, a silent companion offering solace in the midst of confusion. With a heavy heart, I embarked on a solitary journey through the haunting woods, each step a reminder of the tangled web of mysteries that awaited me. The night whispered secrets I was yet to decipher, and the shadows concealed truths that eluded my grasp. As the moon cast its silvery glow upon the landscape, I pressed forward, driven by a relentless determination to unravel the enigma that had entangled me in this surreal and treacherous journey. The clearing in the forest appeared suspended in a perpetual state of desolation. Life had withered away, leaving behind a landscape of wilted vegetation and an eerie silence. My steps echoed in the emptiness, breaking the ominous quietness that enveloped the place. Small scattered skeletons and the complete absence of any animal life painted a disconcerting picture, one that evoked a deep sense of fear within me. My gaze fixated on the cave that stood in the distance, a dark opening that seemed to be the epicenter of this desolation. A cold, damp draft escaped its mouth, like a mysterious whisper calling me toward its interior. My mind grappled between curiosity and the instinctual warning that this place wasn't safe. What secrets or dangers lay hidden within that cavernous darkness? My heart pounded, uncertainty clouding my thoughts. The dog, my silent companion in this surreal journey, remained by my side, its eyes filled with loyalty and an uncanny animal wisdom. Its presence seemed to offer a sliver of courage amidst the darkness. The mystery shrouding the cave was palpable, an enigmatic invitation tempting my curiosity and challenging my prudence. Was it wise to venture into the jaws of the unknown? I couldn't ignore the sense of danger that clung to my intuition. Time hung suspended in a moment of hesitation, my mind weighing the possibilities while my instincts urged caution. Night was looming, its shadows slowly encroaching upon the clearing, a subtle warning that time was running short. Then, a decision solidified within me, fueled by the need for answers and the will to confront whatever awaited in the darkness. With cautious steps, I approached the cave's entrance, every fiber of my being alert to any hint of danger. The dog emitted a soft growl, its gaze fixed on the cave's mouth, as if trying to warn me of something invisible to my eyes. Its gesture reignited my unease, but an indomitable impulse pushed me forward. With a deep breath, I crossed the threshold of the cave, plunging into the darkness that devoured the light. The air grew denser, laden with an earthy and mysterious aroma, as if it were imbued with centuries of secrets held within the earth's depths. The echo of my footsteps reverberated against the rocky walls, my hands feeling the cold contours of the cave, searching for any clue that might guide me. The darkness was overwhelming, but a glimmer of determination burned within me, propelling me forward in search of answers. Each step was a challenge, an internal struggle between the desire to uncover the truth and the terror of the unknown. The cave seemed like an endless maze, its secrets hidden in the shadows, waiting to be unraveled or forever guarded by the veil of mystery. The dog remained by my side, its comforting presence amidst the dimness. Its animal senses seemed alert, its eyes scanning the surroundings as if anticipating some hidden danger in the darkness. A distant whisper echoed in the cavern, a barely perceptible murmur that enveloped my senses with a sense of unease. Was the cave witness to an ancient secret, or was it the dwelling place of something more sinister? Time blurred in the darkness, each minute feeling like an eternity as I ventured deeper into the cavern's depths. More and more, the sense of intrigue mingled with the palpable fear that stirred in the rarefied air. Amidst the blackness, a revelation materialized. The challenge of the cave lay not only in its nooks and passageways but in the enigmas and dangers that lurked, concealed within, challenging my courage and sanity. As I ventured deeper into the cavern, shadows danced ominously on the walls, amplifying the eerie silence that enveloped the space. The air grew heavier, thick with an unidentifiable scent that sent shivers down my spine. Then, in the dimness, shapes began to emerge, bodies strewn across the cave floor, a macabre sight that froze the blood in my veins. My heart sank at the grim reality of death that surrounded me. Amidst the lifeless forms, a sense of dread gripped me as I noticed Sarah lying unconscious but miraculously alive among the corpses. With urgency coursing through my veins, I hurried toward her, intent on rescuing her from this haunting place. But as I approached, the dog, sensing something amiss, grew restless, its bark piercing the oppressive silence of the cave. Before I could reach Sarah, a bone-chilling presence filled the cavern, an entity that defied the laws of nature and reason. The Wendigo, towering over 2 meters tall, its form contorted and unsettling, staggered into the cave, its very presence a manifestation of primal terror. I retreated, seeking cover among the lifeless bodies and foliage, my breath hitching in fear. The Wendigo's ominous aura seemed to suffocate the air, its looming figure casting a malevolent shadow over the scene. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched in horror, hidden from view, as the monstrous entity approached the dog, its movements predatory and menacing. The poor creature's barks turned to whimpers, a futile attempt at warding off the inevitable. With a single, brutal strike, the Wendigo ended the dog's life, a sight that pierced through my soul like a dagger. I clenched my teeth to stifle a cry, a wave of helplessness washing over me as the creature began to feed on the life it had just extinguished. Terror rooted me to the spot, my body trembling as I bore witness to the gruesome spectacle unfolding before my eyes. The Wendigo's insatiable hunger was a harrowing sight, its savagery a stark reminder of the unfathomable horrors lurking within these accursed woods. I prayed for some semblance of escape from this waking nightmare, but the darkness of the cave held me captive, a silent witness to the unspeakable brutality of this unearthly being. The plan had formed in my mind, even amidst the horror unfolding before me. With determination, I approached Sarah, assessing her delicate condition. Her injured leg was a concern, and her unconscious state added a layer of difficulty to our imminent escape. The creature, oblivious to my presence, had retreated from the cave after its grisly meal. I knew I had to act swiftly before it returned in search of more prey. Carefully, I lifted Sarah into my arms, her body light but fragile. Concern for her well-being mingled with the urgency to flee that accursed place. Every step was a challenge, each movement calculated to avoid causing further harm to Sarah's injured leg. The weight of responsibility clung to my shoulders, time was not on our side. The mouth of the cave loomed before me, the hope of escaping that inferno beginning to take shape. But every rustle in the forest, every shadow shifting in the darkness, fueled my fear of being discovered by that monstrous being lurking in the shadows. With each step, the urgency grew. The exit was in sight when a shiver ran down my spine, a foreboding sense warning me that the Wendigo was nearing. The sound of crunching branches and a menacing hiss echoed behind me. There was no time to waste. With a superhuman effort, I quickened my pace, dodging the danger and entering the relative safety of the forest. My ragged breaths and the weight of Sarah in my arms combined with the anxiety of escaping that living nightmare. Each inhale, each beat of my heart, was a reminder of the struggle for survival. I ran as fast as I could, seeking refuge and protection for Sarah and myself. The forest seemed conspiratorial, every noise, every shadow, igniting the fear that was engulfing me. Finally, I found a secure hiding spot, far from the cave and beyond the Wendigo's reach. I carefully placed Sarah in a safe location, watching over her with concern while attempting to keep at bay the panic threatening to engulf me. My mind raced, weighing options, seeking a way to get help or find an escape from that torment. But for now, the priority was to ensure we were out of that creature's reach, find assistance, and a path to salvation. Unfortunately, what I've told you isn't my story. While Max and Sarah did exist, well, they existed, I'm just a search and rescue guy tasked with finding these people. As part of the search and rescue team, our priority was locating two missing individuals, Max and Sarah. Their disappearance had us on edge, and our efforts to find them led us deep into an undisclosed and secluded area. Amidst the dense forest, we stumbled upon a discovery that sent shivers down our spines, a weathered notebook. Its contents held a gripping tale, a first-hand account of harrowing encounters with an unknown creature. The details were vivid, the emotions raw, and every entry felt like a real-life experience. As I read through the pages, the story transitioned into a warning. It seemed to convey the inherent danger of the events described, urging extreme caution for anyone daring to venture into that area. The descriptions of the creature were so vivid and haunting that they felt eerily tangible. The authenticity of the notebook's account struck a chord within the team. We couldn't dismiss it as mere fiction. The descriptions were too detailed, too genuine to ignore. The warning it carried felt like a genuine caution against something inexplicable. Our search for Max and Sarah yielded no results, leaving us with more questions than answers. The notebook remained a cryptic piece of the puzzle, hinting at a reality too unfathomable for conventional explanation. As a seasoned member of the search and rescue team, it was a stark reminder of the unforeseen dangers lurking in unexplored territories. We handled the notebook with caution, treating its contents as a solemn warning, a testament to the potential perils of the unknown. And yes, we found that cave, but no one was inside, just rests of that dog and some strange wood sticks figures with some hair, and somehow it was DNA compatible with those people. Second story. This story was shared. Campfire Legends. I found a journal deep in the woods of Superior National Forest. I've been what some may call a wilderness expert for almost 2 decades now. I plan my trips to various forests very carefully to ensure I make it out alive. I bring all the supplies necessary to survive for a couple of weeks in case I get lost, and I also bring a satellite phone, GPS, and a weapon as a last resort. Sometimes getting lost in the woods is part of the fun. As long as you know what you're doing, that is. The story I'm sharing with you today is of a young man who didn't take all the precautions I would recommend for a journey into an unknown forest. On my most recent expedition, to Superior National Forest in Minnesota, I came upon a journal hanging from a tree. There were only a few pages left in the journal, all the rest were torn out, to be used for kindling as the writer addresses in the journal. The contents of this journal are very strange, and I'll touch on that later. But, without further ado. My name is Anthony Lawrence. I am a student of Bemidji State University. I don't know what the exact date is, but I first came out here on August 3, 2017. I think it's been about 2 weeks now. If you find this journal, you can stop looking for me. I don't have much paper left in this journal, so I'll have to try and keep this short. About a week before coming out here, I got a message on Facebook from some guy saying he's looking for healthy young adventurers who want to earn some money. He said he'd give me $1,000 to spend 48 hours in the woods, using whatever resources I came across to stay alive. Apparently he was writing some kind of book about wilderness survival, and wanted to see what people did with their 48 hours to stay alive. He would provide each individual with a backpack containing limited supplies, and a GoPro camera to record the adventure. I used to be an Eagle Scout, so I figured, sure, 2 days in the woods is nothing. And with that kind of money, I could buy a new gaming chair for my dorm and have enough left over for pizza for the whole next semester. I messaged him back and we set up a time to meet. I was to bring nothing other than some sturdy clothes. He said he'd provide everything I would need to survive in the woods for the 2 days. When I met with him, he seemed like a nice enough guy. Clearly he was very wealthy, too, as he dropped me off at my spot in the forest with his personal helicopter. On the flight over, he explained that the backpack had a GPS tracking device in it so that he could find me wherever I was after the 48 hours, and he'd come pick me up. I thought it was safe to assume this guy knew what he was doing, considering all the prep work he'd put into this, so I trusted him. He dropped me off, and flew away. I spent the first few minutes sorting through what I had in the backpack. There was a simple pocket knife, which I stuffed into a front cargo pocket on my pants for quick access. I was given a small journal, which I also put in my cargo pants. The rest of the contents were a matchbook with 2 matches, a full water bottle, one of those silver thermal blankets, some rope, and various other supplies you'd expect to see in a survival kit that I doubted I'd be using. Oh, and of course the GoPro, which I'd strapped to my chest. There was no map, compass, or any kind of navigation equipment. The idea, I guess, was that I was lost in the woods and had to survive. So I set off. I spent most of the first day hiking in as straight a path as I could manage. Other than the clearing where we landed, it was nothing but thick wooded areas so far. My first goal was to find a source of water I could come back to when needed, but so far no luck. I was dropped off in the early afternoon, so at this point it was starting to get dark and the temperature was dropping. I decided I should start setting up camp. I gathered various small branches and brush from around the area, and found a small clearing where I could start a fire without setting the whole forest ablaze. I used the tiny pocket knife to cut off smaller branches from the surrounding trees, and got a decent-sized stockpile of wood for the night. I had to make use of some of the pages from this journal for kindling to get the fire started, and carefully lit one of the 2 matches I had to get it going. So far, so good. I took out the thermal blanket, and lay down to sleep next to the fire. I awoke before the rise of the sun. The fire was just a mess of ash at this point, and I didn't want to waste my other match so early getting another fire started, so I packed everything up and set off again. After several more hours of hiking, I finally heard something that was music to my ears: running water. A stream. At this point my water bottle was nearly empty, so I was ecstatic that I'd be able to finish it off and refill. Ha! 2 days out here for $1,000. Easiest money I've ever made. I followed the sound of the water to a small stream that seemed to go on for quite a way. After filling my bottle, I decided I'd follow this stream in the direction it was flowing from, ideally to find a lake or something. I still had plenty of daylight left, so I kept going. I was getting pretty hungry at this point, so it'd be nice to find a lake with some fish in it, but even in the worst-case scenario, I could last 2 days without food no problem. It was getting dark again, and the stream I was following was getting wider, but still no lake in sight. I should have just set up camp right then while I still had daylight, but I was determined to find this lake, and kept going. After a couple more hours, it was just too dark to continue. There was some moonlight shining through the leaves above, but not much. Not enough to keep following this stream. So I did the best I could to gather up some more wood for another fire in the dark of the night, and set up a makeshift campground again. I started the fire with pages from the journal for kindling again, and used my last match. I hunkered down and went to sleep, excited to find this lake the following morning and get some food before the guy picked me up to go back home. Loud cracking woke me up in the middle of the night, branches breaking from all around me. I sprang to my feet, startled. I wasn't sure what kind of wildlife was out here, but it could very well be bears or wolves. Adrenaline began pumping through my body, and I tried to listen for where the sounds were coming from, but I could barely hear over my heartbeat. I had to do something, though. I couldn't just stand here like an idiot waiting to be eaten. Whatever kind of animal this was, I felt like I'd be safe if I could climb one of these trees. As the cracking of branches grew closer and louder, I began to climb a big pine tree near me, with plenty of branches making it easy enough to climb. The fire was dying down very quickly, but I had enough residual light to start the climb. I got up 1, 2, 3, 4 branches, probably about 6 feet from the ground, when the noises stopped. So I stopped too. I strained my ears to listen, but again, it was difficult to hear over my heartbeat. I sat there for what seemed like an eternity, 2 of my hands gripping adjacent branches above, 1 of my feet supporting me, and the other foot hanging freely. Nothing but silence around me now. I thought maybe whatever it was had gone now, and that I was safe. I adjusted my grip on the tree, when the branch my foot was on broke off, and I lost my grip on the branches above. I fell backwards, and hit my head on the hard ground below, knocking me unconscious. I don't know how long I was out, but when I awoke, it was still dark. Even darker than before, it seemed. I wasn't on the ground where I'd landed, though. I was on a flat surface, like a table. I tried to sit up and look around, but I couldn't move. I realized then that my hands and feet were bound to this table. I panicked, flexing every muscle in my body trying to get free of this trap. I screamed, "What the fuck," over and over again. As I struggled, I heard what sounded like voices all around me, but I could not discern what the voices were saying. I thought I was alone out here. I was literally out in the middle of nowhere. Who the fuck is out here? Who the fuck is strapping people down in the middle of the forest? I continued to convulse my body, feeling the bindings that were holding me down loosen ever so slightly. That's when shit got really scary, though. I don't know if I was drugged or what, but really crazy stuff started to happen. I heard a loud thumping noise. I heard branches breaking, trees, entire trees being snapped in half from the sound of it. Something was getting closer to me. The voices around me got louder, sounding like some kind of chanting. I quickly realized that I was some kind of sacrifice. Maybe this was all in my head, I really don't know. The absurdity of it all makes it difficult for me to believe that whatever was happening was real. The thumping and cracking of the woods grew louder and louder, until I could make out some kind of silhouette against the backdrop of the woods in front of me, barely illuminated by the moonlight. It was huge. Whatever it was impossibly huge. I was freaking out like I'd never freaked out before. I screamed, as I continued trying to get free of the bindings holding me down. As I watched the forest being torn down in front of me. The chanting from the voices growing louder and louder. The beast was probably 100 yards away from me when I got one of my hands loose. My face was a mess of tears and snot from crying, which I hadn't realized I'd been doing until now. I broke my hand free, and quickly wiped away at my face before getting to work on the other bindings. Once I had that one hand free, I was able to make quick work of the other bindings. I got my other hand free, and the creature let out a deafening roar. The chanting voices around me stopped. I hastened my pace, and shakily got to work on the bindings on my feet. After a mere couple of seconds, I was free of these as well. I sprang up from the table and began to run. I fell over almost immediately. I was incredibly dizzy. They had to have drugged me. I got back up, and continued running away from the beast. I could still hear the forest being torn down behind me, but I did not turn around to look. I just kept running, struggling to overcome the dizziness and keep upright. Whatever this thing was, it was either very slow, or just didn't care enough to pursue me. After a few minutes of running, I could no longer hear the creature, the breaking of the trees, or the chanting voices. But I did not stop. I could not stop. Even if the creature didn't continue in my pursuit, chances are the source of those voices would not let their sacrifice get away that easily. Eventually, I saw the sun rising on the horizon, and I figured I'd been running for long enough. I stopped, leaned back against a tree, and slouched to the ground. I was so scared and in so much pain from the fall from the tree, the bindings on my hands and feet, the tumble to the ground when I got free, and all the thorns and shit I ran into during my escape. I put my head between my legs and sobbed uncontrollably. Once I was done with my episode, I wiped off my face with my shirt and assessed my situation. I no longer had the backpack, or the GoPro. In my cargo pockets, I still had the small pocket knife. I wish I'd realized sooner that I still had this, and this journal. But that was all. I almost had a psychotic break when I realized that without that backpack, the guy who brought me here had no way of finding me. I had to get myself together and figure out what I was going to do. The stream I was following the previous night was nowhere near. I had no idea where I was in relation to the stream, my starting point, or even the sacrificial area I'd just run from. I was lost to begin with, but now I was really lost. They say that if you get lost in the woods, you should stay where you're at so that you're not continually running away from whatever search parties they may send to find you. But I couldn't do that. Not with whatever that creature was out there, and the cultists or whoever they were that were helping it. I had to keep moving. And I had to come up with a plan on how I was going to get that backpack back. After a few minutes collecting myself, I stood up, and began to walk. I didn't know where I was going, but I figured I had like a 50% chance of finding my starting point, the cultist area, or the stream I was following if I just kept walking. It was a few hours yet to the 48-hour mark, so he'd have to come looking for me soon. Maybe if I heard his helicopter, I could somehow signal him. I walked for hours, and everything was still so unfamiliar. The sun was at its highest point, but still no sound of a helicopter. I don't even know how far those people brought me from where I was at. I could be miles away from where I thought I was. I kept walking all day. Eventually it was getting dark again, and I was still lost. I had no supplies. All I had was my pocket knife and my journal. Well, one thing I learned in my time in Boy Scouts was how to start a fire by rubbing a couple of sticks together. So I took out my pocket knife and got to work on gathering wood. I knew I wouldn't be sleeping tonight. It was too risky. But I at least had to keep warm. After probably an hour of rubbing a couple of sticks together, I never really had the patience to get this to work before, I finally got a fire going. I had to use more pages from the journal to get the fire started, so at this point I figured I needed to conserve the pages. I didn't know how long I was going to be out here. As anticipated, I didn't sleep at all. I just sat by the fire all night, trying to keep the flame small as to not draw any unwanted attention. Nothing ever came to bother me though. Morning came, and I'd been out here for almost 3 days now. I was overcome with hunger and thirst. If I was to be out here for a while, I absolutely had to find that stream again. I tried to remember which way I was walking those first 2 days based on the position of the sun. I think I figured it out and started walking the opposite direction, perpendicular to the way I had been walking the day before. I walked all day in that direction, and still nothing. So I set up camp and actually slept a little bit that night. The next day, I finally found some water. I don't know if it was the same stream I saw before, but it didn't matter. At least I'd be able to survive a little bit longer. I brought my face down to the stream and gulped directly from it like an animal. I was amazed at how much I was able to drink, and how satisfying it was. I used some of the water to wash my face and feet, and set off to follow the stream to its source. I followed this stream for several days. I didn't want to stray too far from it, as it was the only thing really keeping me alive. Eventually, though, I came across a larger portion of the stream where I saw several frogs and tadpoles. I was fucking starving at this point. I didn't care how disgusting it was, I was going to eat these frogs. So that's what I did. I started a small fire using the same technique that I was starting to get pretty good at, and I cooked some frogs and ate them. People say it tastes like chicken and, well, they're not wrong. I continued this routine of following the stream for the next couple days, and it was getting wider. I was starting to think that I had found my way again, and my theory was confirmed when I saw the ashes of my fire from the second night. Luckily, I had daylight to work with this time. This is where I fell from the tree and they took me away somewhere. I'm not an expert tracker by any means, but there were definite signs of broken branches that I was able to follow, hopefully to where they brought me to. I followed this trail for a long, long time, and when I was starting to think I wasn't going to find what I was looking for, I saw it. I saw an opening in the forest where that beast had come through, and I saw the table where they strapped me down. I kept my distance, assessing the area. I didn't see any signs of human or animal life, but if they took my backpack, it had to be near here. That brings me to now. I'm writing this all down just in case I fail, and I don't get the backpack. I'm going to hang this journal from a nearby tree. If I don't come back for it, that probably means that whatever is in these woods has killed me. And like I said, you can stop looking. Whatever that thing was, if it wasn't in my imagination, I have no doubt that it could kill me without much trouble. If you're reading this, I am definitely dead. And that's all there was. There were no more blank pages to write on if he wanted to. He had used up the rest of these pages for kindling, I guess. I searched around the area. I found the journal to see if I could find any evidence of his encounters, but I don't see any cavities in the forest from a large creature, and I don't see any kind of table that he might have been bound to. There's no sign that any of this actually happened from what I can tell. The date he wrote down was 2 years ago, so I did some research. As I mentioned earlier, there was something really strange about all this, and I'm not talking about the creature he described. It's likely that the knock on his head had him confused, and his mind was filling in the blanks for something that didn't really happen. I looked him up on Google first, and found a missing persons report from August of 2017. So he definitely existed, and this wasn't just some prank journal somebody left in the woods. Then I looked him up on Facebook. His last Facebook post just said, "Going camping for a couple days, won't have phone service. Talk to you all soon." So he didn't really tell people what he was doing. I got a hold of the boy's family and gave them this journal, and tried to get more information from them. Obviously this was very hard for them to take in, but curiosity got the better of me, and I had to know more. I convinced them to sign into their son's Facebook account, which they were able to get into as his password was saved on the home computer, and to look for the message he talked about in the journal. We found the message he described in his journal from the guy offering $1,000. Only thing is, this guy was a ghost. He never existed. His name doesn't turn up any results, and if it truly was a wilderness survival guide author, I would for sure have found something. But no, it all seemed to be some kind of scam. Whoever this guy was, he actually convinced this kid to go to the woods by himself, promising to pick him up after 2 days, likely with no intention to actually follow through. How many kids did he do this to? Was there actually some kind of cult out there he was working with, bringing them sacrifices? Well, hopefully the police will be able to find something out. I doubt I'll ever hear the results of their findings, but I just really hope they find this guy. I'll leave you with a little piece of advice: never go out into the woods alone. Especially without any kind of communications or navigation equipment. And for the love of God, let someone know where you're going. Third story. This story was shared by you/turquoise umbrella. This is how you kill a Wendigo. My twin sister Janessa was murdered at age 16. I witnessed it like a coward from atop a tree in the forest where it happened. I'd actually blacked out the memory for a while. I knew she was dead, but I couldn't remember how it happened. It wasn't until I tried therapy that it slowly came back to me. I was also reminded of how much my parents used to fight. Our family was planning on a camping trip the day before my sister's death. Before leaving, my parents erupted into another massive fight. Janessa and I had been looking forward to the trip, and once again our parents' awful communication skills was ruining it before it even began. We snuck out of the house and took a lift to the forest. We left our phones at home, not caring whether our parents would be worried sick. We enjoyed ourselves the first day. I set up our tent, made a fire, had s'mores, and did all that stuff one typically associated with camping. The next morning everything changed. I woke up alone in our tent. Outside I hear my sister talking to someone. Inquisitive, I opened the tent and saw someone sitting at our now out campfire who looked just like me. The figure transformed as soon as Janessa realized it wasn't me. Together we ran off, that thing rushing after us with heavy steps. I was faster than my sister and a bit more athletic. I grabbed onto a tree branch and climbed up a tree. Janessa was not so lucky. I watched it happen. I watched that thing tear my sister to pieces. I'm still haunted by her screams. I also understand now why she always appears badly mutilated in my nightmares. I stayed up in that tree overnight, my sister's corpse lying in the leaves. Her remaining eye always staring up at me. While in therapy there was a moment when I suddenly recalled the hallucination I had the morning after my sister's death. I thought I saw her corpse clawing at the tree where I hid. She wanted me to come down and join her. It caused me to panic and cry out. A couple of men who had been camping in the area heard my screams and at last I was rescued. My parents don't argue anymore. I hardly see them at all anymore since my sister's death. We're an upper-middle-class family. Over the last couple of years my parents have frequently gone on vacations. They don't tell me where and I never ask. I usually just wake up and find out they've left yet again. I'm out of high school now and I have no career path yet. I've only really had one thing on my mind since I remembered what killed Janessa. Now I'm returning to the forest where she died. Now I'm going to go after the thing that killed her. I've been preparing for this, and if it is a Wendigo like I've suspected, then I'm more than ready to take my revenge. This is how I'm doing it. I took a lift again. Had the driver known what I was carrying in my bags I doubt they would have let me in. As I sat there, the realization of what I was doing grew heavily on me. What the hell am I doing? I've been talking myself up for the last couple of years. As much as I want a glorious victory, the closer I've come to this day the more I daydream about dying the same way Janessa did. As angry as I am with my parents, I don't think they deserve to lose their only remaining child. But I just can't move on knowing that thing is still out there. My legs were as dense as gold once I tried to exit the cab. The driver watched awkwardly as I struggled to pull myself out while putting on my backpack and working to carry the other supplies. Why was I doing this alone? I don't want anyone else getting hurt in this, I think was my reasoning. But God, I wish I wasn't out here doing this alone. With each step I took into the forest, the more the terror numbed. I was in the domain of the Wendigo now. I wasn't entirely sure how much of the information about them was real. I knew they could change their appearance. I know that their true form is just like the drawings people have made. There's no way to be an expert on these things unless you've actually dealt with one. I'm still not sure why it decided not to come after me. Based on its size, I doubt it would have had any difficulty. Instead, I'm still alive and crazy enough to come back and pick a fight. As I set up camp, I found myself jumping at the sound of any bird call or movement from a nearby animal. The way I hammered in my tent, I knew I was calling attention to myself. In my left pants pocket was a gun. Like werewolves, I'd heard that silver bullets were necessary to kill Wendigos. What if I'm wrong? The thought had been with me ever since I'd stepped foot back into these woods. I stopped frequently while setting up. Behind nearby tree, I was almost certain I could see someone watching me and then hiding behind it again. I didn't bother to walk over and check it out. I finished up my tent, and made up my sleeping bag inside. As I did this, I heard calls that sounded almost human off in the distance. It probably knew I was here. The minutes went by slowly, but soon dusk set upon the forest. I built a fire like the one Janessa and I had made. I roasted 2 marshmallows. Despite her absence, I made a s'more for her as well, resting it on a sizable rock near the fire. As I ate it, I thought about our last night together. All things considered, it was pleasant. Being twins, we had moments where we'd gotten into arguments like our parents. We'd fought one another. We had our problems. But that night had been pleasant. I'd actually been glad we'd decided to camp without our parents. As frightened as I still was, I felt a warmth not from the fire. A sense of calm overcame me as my memories were suddenly flooded with the good times Janessa and I had. The good times were not for long. I could hear footsteps not far behind me. Jeremy. I could never forget that voice. It sounded just like Janessa, but I knew it wasn't her. For some reason I felt compelled to sit there calmly. As it approached, I could tell it was going over to take a seat at the rock where I'd left the s'more. I glanced delicately to my right. I watched as a figure that looked almost identical to the Janessa I remembered pick up the s'more and take a bite. "That's not yours." I surprised myself blurting that out. The fake Janessa ignored me, continuing to scarf it down. My terror turned to anger. The thing responsible for my sister's death was standing right next to me, mocking my grief. I didn't wait for it to finish. I pulled out my gun and pointed it directly at the figure. Before I could fire, the creature jumped to the left and turned around. I was struck with paralysis when I saw the mutilated face of my sister's corpse staring back at me. "I'm trapped, Jeremy." I struggled to keep aim. How dare that thing pretend to be her? It won't let me go. And it won't let you go either. We can be together again. It's so much nicer than going home to an empty house and unloving parents. She held her hand out to me. "Trust me, brother. Please. My trigger finger felt as though struck with a serious case of arthritis. Janessa took a step towards me. Wait, no. It's not Janessa, why did I suddenly forget that? Feed the forest with me, Jeremy. It's so much better being dead. Prove it. At last I pulled the trigger. The creature hollered in pain as it fell to the ground. I'd hit a lung, which wouldn't be enough. I aimed the gun at its heart, but failed to pull the trigger as it rolled over and jumped back to its feet. Within seconds it transformed from a corpse of my sister to its massive dark skeletal form with massive antlers. My mind was caught between fight and flight. I stood there aiming my gun but desperately wanted to flee. As it rushed towards me, I chose the later option. I rushed over to the bag I'd left near the tent. Inside was a weapon I'd built myself. As I rushed over, I could tell I wasn't going to be able to outrun it. I fired another shot. The bullet lodged itself inside the neck of the beast. It cried out once more, buying me a bit of time to get to the bag. Why did I have it zipped up? As I tried to open it, the Wendigo rushed towards me again. Just like on the day of Janessa's death, I ran from the campsite, further into the forest. History was repeating itself. I was going to fail to avenge my sister. My parents were going to lose their last remaining child, all because I couldn't let this go. After at least several minutes, I'd somehow managed to keep outrunning it. I refused to slow down and look behind my shoulder. As I kept running, I noticed that I'd gone in some sort of circle. Up ahead of me was the campsite. I had a chance to grab the bag and pulled out the weapon. The closer I came to the campsite, the louder the Wendigo's footsteps became. I could almost feel the wind as the creature tried to claw at me. Once I reached the campsite, I put my hand out, clutching the bag. It felt like almost too great a risk to put my gun back in my pocket, but I needed free to pull out the weapon. I managed to do just that and used my left hand to pull out a long metal spike. I'd built it in such a way as to have the spike shoot out at the push of a button. The Wendigo wasn't going to slow down until it had me. I had no choice. I had to turn around. I had to have perfect timing. I had to collect my debt from the creature that took my twin sister. Chew on this, you son of a bitch. I turned around, pressing the button that shot the spike out. Less than a foot from my face was the Wendigo, its cries so loud my ears hurt and began to ring. I'd done it. The spike had pierced the heart. Silver. Weakly the Wendigo tried to swipe at me, but somehow lacked the strength. The next part was a gamble. I pulled out my gun and shot it in the head. It wasn't going to be enough to end the Wendigo, assuming what I'd read up was correct. I rushed back over to where I'd dropped my bag. Inside was a silver axe I'd also designed myself. When I returned, the creature was still conscious, letting out continuous agonizing cries. I felt no sympathy. I hacked away at its wrists first. Its claws were the biggest threat and I wanted them gone. Despite the weight lifting I'd been doing, it took over a dozen hacks to remove the first long-fingered hand. I pulled out my gun and shot it again in the head. It subdued the creature long enough for me to remove the second hand, and then I began on its head. As it began waking up again, I found myself screaming at the creature. I demanded it stay dead, calling it every insulting name that came to mind. Once I'd hacked most of the way through its head, I pulled it off. I kicked it a couple of feet away. The Wendigo no longer moved. It took over an hour, but I'd managed to put each limb, the head, and torso in the trash bags I'd brought along. One by one I carried them back to the campsite. I lit another fire, burning each bag. It took until dawn for me to burn the body. I left the torso for last. It was a struggle, but I managed to remove the heart, rip it to pieces, and placed it in a silver box. After locking it, I looked around the site and decided to leave everything except my gun and the box behind. I was never particularly religious, but in the months leading up to my fight I'd gotten to know a priest at a church in my area called Street Alphonsus. Luckily for me, he was there when I arrived with the silver box. His face went several shades paler when I showed it to him. Nevertheless, he escorted me to the back of the church with a pair of shovels and helped me bury it. Once done, I sat there, suddenly flooded with overwhelming emotions. I did it. The Wendigo had been slain. I'd done it. My sister's killer was dead, its body was burned, its heart in pieces and buried. Janessa. I cried out. I kept my promise. I killed it. The Wendigo can't get anyone else. It won't kill anyone else. I placed my lowered head in my hands and continued to cry. I'm sorry I wasn't braver before, I whimpered. I'm so sorry I wasn't stronger before. I placed some flowers on my sister's grave an hour later. I talked to her tombstone as though she was there listening. I'd like to believe she was and that she was pleased with my accomplishment. Afterwards I returned home and slept through the day and all night. Once morning came, I heard some noise downstairs. I went down to see that my parents were home and sitting down to breakfast. They stopped and looked over at me, saying nothing. I walked over and pulled up a seat. I had no appetite at all. How was your trip? Where did you guys go? My parents exchanged looks before my father replied. We went out west to visit your aunt and uncle. Did you enjoy it? I had difficulty keeping my chin from quivering as I lowered my head again. Jeremy, sweetie, what's wrong? Both my mother and my father got up and came over to me. Why do you keep leaving me alone? God damn it, I'm the only kid you have left. Don't you give a fuck about me? They hugged me tightly, offering apologies. I could have sworn I felt another pair of hands on my shoulders. Their light touch was the most comforting of all. I really hope Janessa is proud of me. But a new task was ahead of me now. A harder task perhaps. I was going to have to figure out how to reconcile with my parents. Our family had been broken long before her death. We'll never be whole again, but I know with some effort we can be better than this. I hope she can continue to give me the strength to put myself together as I progress into adulthood. Fourth story. This story was shared darkly_gathers. On a hunting trip with my granddad, deep in the forest, we made a haunting discovery. There's something wrong with the animals. Drizzle taps lightly on the leaves all around us, the smell of pine rich in the air as we creep through the undergrowth, my granddad and I. I run my tongue along my teeth, focusing. I raise the rifle a little higher. A Nosler. A way higher quality weapon than I should be using, the thing is wasted on me. I'm an appalling hunter. I'm not even sure if I agree with it, to be honest. Hunting, I mean. Ethically speaking. I mean, my granddad and I eat basically everything we kill and, to be honest, I don't kill a whole lot. I send many of my shots deliberately wide. I just do this to hang out with him, really. He's a fascinating man, and the guy likes taking me out into the woods, so I just go along with it, it's fine. It's good quality time that I'm lucky to have. But we're stalking a pair of deer right now. Big things as well. I'm pretty sure the creatures know we're here, but you can get surprising close provided you don't actually give off any sign that you're trying to shoot them. Stay low, Robbie, he murmurs through the side of his mouth. Move to your right past the bush, then it's a clean shot. Take it when ready. I like my name. Named after the man beside me, as it happens. Robert. He being Robert the First, and me of course, Robert the Second. I nod and creep into position, taking careful aim as instructed. I see a thumbs up in the corner of my eye, and I shoot. I miss. The sound ricochets around the forest and birds burst from a nearby tree, shooting up towards the sky. The deer will round in a panic and make to leave. Go damn it, my granddad mutters and raises up from behind the bush, bringing his rifle with him and firing off a quick shot. My ego is somewhat relieved by the fact that he misses too, and we both watch as the deer disappear into the undergrowth and shadow of the forest. The man lowers his weapon and looks at me. I do the same and give him a shrug. We hold eye contact for a second, then, he breaks with a chuckle, shaking his head. Damn it, Robbie, every time I think I've taught you something you manage to pull off some magnificent blunder just like that. Hey, well, you know what they say, you shouldn't judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree. I ain't judging you on your tree climbing ability. You're my grandson. I'm judging you on your ability to swim, fishy. I point to the shattered branch my granddad caused when he fired his shot. I truly am learning from the best. Bastard, he snorts with a laugh, thumping me on the chest. Come on, let's track M. Plenty daylight left. We push around the bush and head through the little clearing, stepping over a fallen log and making to follow the route the deer both took, but my granddad suddenly stops and holds up his hand with his head cocked to the side. I pause likewise, waiting, holding my breath and listening intently. My ears hone in on the sound of rustling foliage and snapping twigs. It grows louder, heading towards us, in the exact direction the deer were running from. Jesus, my granddad grunts, they're coming back this way. They'll have seen a dash, but he is cut off by the sudden emergence of the deer through the bushes ahead. Rushing right at us from the green, gloomy shade. Shit! I shout out loud in a panic. The deer make no attempt to run around us in the slightest and run instead directly towards our position. I raise the rifle and take rapid, shaky aim. Damn it, Steve, down. Granddad shouts, grabbing me by the sleeve and hauling me to the forest floor, back behind the log. Steve. The air escapes me as I crash with my granddad down to the ground, and the deer jump right over us. My granddad instantly takes position, cocking and aiming his own rifle over the top of the log, deathly focused. Something will have made M run like that. They'll have seen a wolf, or a bear. A wolf? A bear? I'd be surprised to see either, at this time of day. But as I said, something made them run. My granddad remains cool and composed, the barrel of the rifle fixed on the damaged woodland ahead and along the deer's path. I stick close, watching out in all directions in case we are approached from the side, gun cocked and heart pounding. But nothing comes. We wait for a tension-laden minute, then another, muscles aching with the stress of simply holding ourselves in preemptive positions, but as I said, nothing else comes towards us. My granddad cautiously gets to his feet. Weird, he mutters. We'd better move on out of here. Come on, stay alert, but let's go. I nod in reply and together we make a swift but carefully exit from the little grove, heading back through the woods and retracing our steps. After what I hope is something of a safe distance, I ask my granddad a question. Why'd you call me Steve, back then? When the deer were coming at me, you called me Steve. You said, Steve, get down. Ha, is that so? My granddad asks, scratching his chin. I don't know. You know Steve though, right? Old friend of mine. I swear I've mentioned him before. I consider. Yeah, maybe. Once or twice. Granddad shakes his head. I've definitely talked about him more than that. You probably weren't listening. He sighs. It was just the moment, I suppose. The way you were standing, the deer coming right at you, raising your gun. What would have happened if you'd shot one, It would have gone right down and knocked you out with it. I don't know, it wasn't all that big dash. It was bigger than you're giving it credit for. And at that speed? Would have flattened you. It's what I told Steve, all those years ago. He did the exact same thing, the idiot. What's he up to these days? My granddad does not reply. He only looks out into the depths of the forest. We're atop a high hill, and the trees give way to a view across a deep, green valley. The sky is gray overhead. The man tuts and shakes his head. Steve. Steve isn't around much anymore. Oh, sorry. He's not dead, is he? My granddad grimaces. I don't know, exactly. You don't know? Look, just drop it, kid. A story for another day. Let's just get back to the campsite. Cook that rabbit we caught earlier. He pauses, putting out a hand, and I stop at once, following his line of sight. I hadn't even spotted it, but it chills my blood to see it now. Gives me the shivers even remembering. We stand only a few feet away from a deer. It's one of the same deer as before, I'm sure of it. Neither of us had spotted it because the thing is standing entirely still. Like a statue. A taxidermy, almost. The hell? Granddad whispers, staring at the creature in surprise. He squints and then leans over to me. It's breathing, though only barely. Look down there at its chest. I do so, taking the spectacle in. The deer has one hooved foot placed against the trunk of a tree, which in itself is quite curious already, but the animal does not move, even slightly. It does not blink. Hey, my granddad barks, then louder, hey, he claps his hands, but the deer does not react. Then, in time with a sudden flurry of water from the rain-soaked leaves above us, the deer slowly turns its head. All the way around, until it is staring at my granddad and myself, one eye on each. My stomach drops, though I am unsure as to why. The deer is. I don't know. Something is wrong. The thing must be sick, my granddad murmurs. We'll take a different route back, go wide of this creature. We're too close already as it is. Yeah, I mumble, and the two of us edge away and through the undergrowth, taking a new direction as the deer watches us go, deathly silent. I shiver as it at last passes out of sight, lost behind us to the watery green shadows of the forest. Asterisk. Later that night, after returning to camp and preparing and eating our catch, I bid my granddad good night and crawl into my tent, zipping the flaps up after me. I fumble round in the near darkness for a while, my lamp casting intense, black shadows out in all directions as I shifted from place to place, trying to work my way into my sleeping bag. It doesn't feel particularly cold at the moment, but the temperature has the potential to suddenly drop at any given minute, and I don't want to wake up frozen solid at 3 a.m. As it happens, I don't. I awaken at 3:15, not frozen, but slick with sweat. Roused from a dreamless slumber, my ears prick up at the sound of rustling and snuffling outside. Right by my tent. I hold my breath and grit my teeth. It's this fear of the unknown that gets me. It's probably just a rabbit, or a hare. But the possibility that it could be something larger, something more dangerous, is impossible to ignore. For some reason my mind does not go to an image of a bear, or a mountain lion, or anything like that. It goes to the deer. Frozen in place. Eyes unblinking, head turning as it watches my granddad and I pass by. Something presses up against the tent, right by my head. I wince and stare at the bulging material through the darkness. I try not to think about the fact that I am separated by the beasts of the forest by a pair of what are effectively thin, flimsy sheets of fabric. Just ignore it, I tell myself. Ignore it and it'll go away. I quietly roll over and scrunch up my eyes, determined to be a man and to not get frightened by the presence of some raccoon or squirrel. The creature sniffles some more. Rustling about in the grass, in the dark. My heart rate increases as I hear the thing pawing against the tent's outer lining. And then, for a second, it stops entirely, and to my horror I hear my granddad's voice. It's breathin', though only barely. The sentence comes crisp and sharp through the general murmur and backing breeze of the forest. The sentence is entirely devoid of cadence. As if read from a book by someone who has never known English. Look down there at its chest, says the voice. Fuck. Fuck. Panicking now, I do not know what I am supposed to do. It's my granddad outside, playing a prank on me. It has to be. It must be, because there is literally no other explanation that makes sense. Regardless of the fact that this is entirely out of character. Regardless of the fact that I have never heard the man speak in such a way, even in humor, in his entire life. He must be sleepwalking. That's it. My explosive heart rate cools just a little. That's it. It's the only possible explanation that makes sense. And if that's the case, then, I can't just leave him to wander around outside. Despite my fear, I gently ease my way out of my sleeping bag. You might think me an idiot, but, if my granddad is wandering around in the woods in a daze he could get lost, or seriously hurt. So I push aside my irrational terror, and with a shaking hand I reach for the zip, pulling it open with a noise that is far too loud for comfort. Fuck it. In for a penny, in for a pound. I yank the zip open, and then the next, and push my head out into the night, the cool air washing across my face as I raise the lantern to cast away the darkness. What I see, is nothing. I jump outside of the tent, staring, lifting the lantern as the light falls across the long grasses and the nearby trees. We're still on the ridge of the valley, but the valley itself is shrouded in darkness. A small section of visible moon illuminates the very tips of the trees in silver, but I am too preoccupied to properly appreciate the natural beauty for now. I pace around the tent in a circle and see no evidence of my grandfather. Granddad? I hiss out into the night, turning and raising the lantern up high. Still, nothing. Something chirps softly from between the branches of the deep woods. I turn to face it with throat dry, but the trees give away no secrets. I crossed the grass and crouched down by my granddad's tent. The zip remains closed. "Granddad?" I whisper, to no response. I try again, a little louder. "Granddad?" I hear a groan and a grumble from inside. "Huh." I hear him mutter, then, "The hell. Granddad, are you good?" "Of course I'm good, what's the matter with you?" "All right." Nothing. See you tomorrow." He murmurs something under his breath and I hear the rustle of his sleeping bag as he rolls over. I stand up straight and stare out into the night. For a second time, that chirping sound rings out from the branches, and I make a hasty return to my tent, zipping the thing up tight and secure, shivering as I try to force myself back to sleep. It takes a long time, and I do not recall drifting off. My dreams are disturbing, and are largely comprised of the discovery that something crept into my tent, dream distorted and warped into an impossible size. My dream self scrambles around from place to place as a nightmare slithers and swims through the shadows like water. It is a welcome relief when I awake safe and sound, to the faded glare of tent-filtered, morning sunlight shining into my face. "Ugh," I mutter, sitting up straight and groggily rubbing my eyes. For a second or two the reality of last night blurs into the dreams, but as I remember the truth, that bitterly familiar anxiety settles back in. I clamber out of the tent into the warming morning air to find my granddad washing his face in a pot of water. "Mornin'," he grunts. "How you feel this morning?" "Not great, to be honest," I reply. "You were sleepwalking last night." "Eh?" Granddad glances up at me but continues with his routine. "No, I don't sleepwalk. You were mumbling nonsense and bashing into my tent at like 3 a.m., I tell him. "I came to check on you but you must have just gone back to bed." My granddad pauses and looks right at me. "So that did happen then. You're disturbing me. Thought I might have dreamt it." He stands up and scratches his jaw. "Tell me exactly what happened." I relay the story, and my granddad remains silent until its end. Slightly paled he looks around at our surroundings, and down into the valley. "I fucking knew it," he mutters, almost imperceptibly. "It's the same place. The exact same place." "What?" I ask him. "What do you mean?" "I came here with Steve, once. I knew I'd been here before. I thought I'd picked the location pretty randomly, but I guess my subconscious had other ideas." "Granddad, I don't know what the hell you're talking about." He stares out over the valley and I follow his gaze. We watch as a small flock of dark birds flutters around in a circle above the trees. Again, and again, and again. Around and around they go. He turns to look straight at me, his expression grim. Perhaps even, afraid, a little. And this unsettles me deeply. Nothing is supposed to scare that man. Pack up, Robbie. Make it good, and be quick. We're out of here. In another atmosphere I might have questioned him, but the vibe is clear. I do as he says at once and in silence, we quickly pack away our gear, loading up our backpacks with constant furtive glances to the trees. The forest has dried somewhat since yesterday's rain, but the sky overhead is still a swirl of gray. We set out beneath its gloom, all trace of our modest campsite thoroughly erased. My granddad's pace is a little faster than normal. Bracken and pine needles are crunched underfoot as he strides through the woodlands. He clenches his rifle a little tighter, too. I break the tension. Granddad, what the hell is going on? What aren't you telling me? I was an idiot once before, Granddad replies, as a breeze whistles its way through the boughs of the trees. And I lost a good friend. I won't let the same thing happen to you. We push through the bushes and pass by a large pond, surrounded by thick, tangled weeds. I glance over to the water. The water is a grim gray-green and covered in a curious, floating moss. The surface is broken by the heads of 3 deer, standing perfectly still. The entirety of their bodies below the necks are submerged, and they stare at us as we pass them by. On another day I might have found the sight quite comical, but right now I feel nothing but cold, biting fear. One of the deer rises up from the water, rippling it quietly, rearing up onto its hind legs, and my granddad grabs my sleeve and hauls me along. Don't stop moving. We're getting out of here. Just keep going, Robbie. Our steps become faster, our breathing a little more labored. The trees rush by, branches scratch at my arms and my face. We push out into a clearing, and my granddad skids to an immediate halt. What is it? I ask, panting. Something moves in the shadows of the trees, shifting between the branches at the clearing's opposite side. The hair at the back of my neck bristles and I instinctively raise the rifle. The sounds of the birds and the breeze fade away, and the air itself seems to darken as the shifting shadow ahead draws closer. It is difficult, near impossible to make out its exact shape through the layers of branch and foliage. But I swear I can see a rough, vaguely humanoid silhouette amongst the shadows and the dark, green-blown blur. Did you come back for me, Robert? Whispers a voice. My muscles tense up in reaction to my name. Is it my name it speaks, or my granddad's? My granddad sucks some air in through his teeth. He begins to carefully sidestep his way round the clearing, and I copy his movements. You wouldn't leave me behind again, would you? The voice is not dissimilar to the one I heard last night. It is different, sure, but the cadence, or lack thereof, is much the same. My granddad raises the rifle, cocks it, but he does not fire. Keep going around, kid, he says to me. To the left, pass through that part of the clearing there, I'll be right behind you. I start to edge my way round the clearing, never taking my eye off the shadow in the trees just ahead. I'm trying so hard to focus on it. To understand what it is that I am seeing, but I can't. The very branches themselves seem to be moving, cracking and rippling in the shade. The figure takes a sudden step forward. Run, my granddad shouts, raising the rifle and firing a loud shot up into the air. Unprepared for such a sudden noise, my ears ring as I scramble and stumble through the forest, along a natural path of sorts between the trees, though I stumble to a halt when I realize my granddad is not behind me. He told me to run, but, do I go back for him? I have to. It's a no-brainer. So I swivel around and prepare to charge back to the clearing when the man himself staggers out through the bushes towards me, face white as a sheet. Get that damn thing out of my face, you idiot, he grunts as she shoves away the barrel of my rifle, and together we race through the forest. My granddad dumps his backpack and I do likewise, leaving the equipment behind as we tear through the undergrowth, way back to where we parked the truck the other day. When at last we see it, waiting for us on the edge of a dirt track road, we throw ourselves inside, and my granddad stuffs in the key and turns it with a clank, the engine revving into life. The wheels spin and away we go, back through the wilds down the long back roads of the woodlands. I summon the courage, after a while and once the air has cooled, to ask my granddad what he saw. What happened after he fired the rifle? Thing tried to speak to me again. The deep woods, Robbie. I'm sorry for taking you there. They can screw with a man's mind, these places. Real bad. There was something there though, wasn't there? Something real. Yes. I think so. Was it? I falter. Who was it, Granddad? A nightmare. That's all. Something that shouldn't exist, by all the laws of nature. Its voice. Did you recognize the voice? You said you heard something outside your tent last night. Right? I nod. It sounded like me. Yeah, I reply. But it wasn't me, was it? No, I reply. No, it wasn't. Sometimes we hear voices. Don't mean they belong to anyone. So why didn't you shoot it? What? His hands flex and clench around the wheel. You fired the rifle, but you aimed up into the air. Not at the shadow. Why did you do that? To this my granddad has no answer. He only reaches briefly across to pat my shoulder, and as the clouds swirl overhead, we spend the rest of the long drive home in a contemplative silence. Silence, with the occasional glance to the thickets of trees that pass us by. Fifth story. Not sure if it was a Wendigo, but something odd happened. When I was 8 years old, both of my parents worked full-time. My dad was predominantly on third shift at his job, and my mom was an elementary school teacher. We lived literally right up the road from my grandparents in a very small town. It was getting close to my 9th birthday when I contracted strep throat and scarlet fever. I was severely sick, could barely speak, had the first case of cold sweats that I remember in my life, and could barely pull myself out of bed to even use the restroom. I was absolutely miserable, and of course, being as young as I was, I didn't take the pain very well. My poor mother was at a loss of what to do with her working and my dad needing to use daylight hours to sleep. The first day I was sick, perhaps it was a Tuesday. My birthday would fall on a Friday. My dad stayed up most of the day with me, made me food, let me sleep in his lap on the couch, wiped my forehead down, made sure I took my medicine, etc. But on the second day, my grandmother had called and offered to let me stay at her house so my dad could sleep. He said yes and woke me up around 7 that morning to drive me up to her home. My grandfather also worked at this time too, so he was already gone to work when I arrived there. I don't remember too much of the early morning. I probably just slept in my grandmother's bed, tossing and turning when I'd wake up feeling extra bad. She encouraged me to swallow my awful-tasting medicine, a little more gently than my dad did. She did fix me some tomato soup to try and eat, and it was the first time since I'd gotten sick that I had an appetite. I should mention my grandmother had this cute Yorkshire Terrier named Samson. He was very docile, not like the usual annoying, barking all the time terriers. Samson came into the room and curled up next to me as I dozed. I do know when I woke up at some point, it had to be the early afternoon/lunch time because I could hear the TV faintly from the living room on some game show. My grandmother had a ritual of eating her lunch while watching a game show. I think it was The Price is Right. I was trying to fall back asleep because I had gotten this really bad headache, maybe from dehydration. I was on the verge of sleep when I was jolted awake by the Samson yelp that erupted from the living room. The terrier curled up next to my feet, perked up, but didn't move. I knew I had heard his name being called too, but it was odd he didn't respond. Samson. My grandmother called again. Samson. Samson. The dog still didn't run out of the room to her. I was confused, as he was so obedient to my grandmother. He was almost frozen, staring at the cracked open door but making no attempt to go to her. She called Samson, maybe 3 or 4 more times. Then I got annoyed. I remember flinging the covers off of me. Of course my clothes are sticky with sweat and I just generally feel uncomfortable and groggy. I stumble out of the room wiping my eyes, asking, "Grandma, do you need Samson?" "He's in your room with me. I'm in the living room and I have to do a double take. The TV is still on and blaring. There's a bowl of soup sitting on the coffee table and an open Pepsi next to it, but my grandmother isn't anywhere in the room. Maybe she's in the bathroom." I crossed the room and went past the kitchen, empty too. I got to the bathroom door which was shut, and knocked. Nothing. I then opened it. No one was in there. The house is empty. It's not a huge house either, I've covered all of the rooms. So yes, my first reaction was to get scared. I could clearly hear my grandmother calling for the dog but she's not anywhere inside. I can feel my hands and feet get all tingly. I start shouting for my grandma, but my voice is just echoing through the small, cramped home. Samson had gotten up at this point and was sitting near the couch, looking completely undisturbed. I fumbled for the remote and turned the TV off, and yelled, more like wheezed, to the top of my lungs, which you can imagine how painful this was with a scratchy, infected throat, "Grandma." The worst part happened next. I heard her shouting my name back. Clear as ever, like she was standing only feet away. I start crying now, scared out of my mind. I feel like maybe it has to be a ghost. I grew up with scary ghost stories courtesy of my dad and I'm convinced now I'm in the room with a ghost. And then she/whatever this was, proceeded to call my name again. Then, there was a second voice, definitely not my grandmother's. It was deeper, definitely more masculine, and absolutely terrifying as it shouted, "Come to the front door." I did not do that. Instead I made sure to run back to my grandparents' bedroom, lock the door, and pick up the telephone on their nightstand. I called my own home phone and my dad's sleepy voice answered. Through a barely comprehensible voice, I managed to croak something like, "Daddy, there's someone in the house and I can't find Grandma. She's gone." My dad of course said he jumped out of bed, grabbed his Swiss Army knife he kept in a drawer next to the bed, and ran down the road to the house in his PJs and bare feet. He ran up to the front door, jiggled the handle, it was locked. So he made his way around and since he knew the garage code, just punched it in and got inside. A quick sweep of the 3 rooms of the home showed no one was in there. It's not like there was really anywhere to hide. I ran out of the room once I was sure he was there and began bawling in his arms. He kept reassuring me there was no one here, and then asked if I did know where Grandma possibly was. I said I hadn't, and explained I'd woken up to her calling for Samson but she hadn't been anywhere there. This was back when cell phones were definitely around, but there were no iPhones and my grandparents certainly wouldn't have been buying them anyway. My dad had one but not on him at the time. I could tell he was trying to keep calm, so he just said we would need to go back to our house. I was sure he was probably going to call the police at that point just because my grandma still hadn't popped up and her car had been in the garage when he got in. If she'd left, she'd gone on foot. We hadn't even made 2 steps out of the driveway when from my grandma's neighbor's house, my grandma was strolling out, chatting to the neighbor. She saw my dad and then me, crying my eyes out, and immediately ran over to see what was wrong. She was super apologetic. She said she'd stepped out right when she'd heated up her soup to go see her neighbor, who'd called about looking at something my grandma was going to buy. My grandma had figured I was asleep and she'd only be gone for 10 or 15 minutes. At first people may have assumed I was feverish, therefore delusional, but I still stand by what happened. I know for a fact I was definitely alone in the house, save for Samson, but the voices I heard were real. For a while I was hesitant to go back to my grandma's house, because this happened in the middle of the day. I later read stories at school about Wendigos, or creatures that would disguise their voices to lure people. This was the closest explanation I could ever form about what I heard. I never shared to anyone that I thought it was for sure a Wendigo, and chalked it up to maybe just a ghost. I'm close to my 20s now. Last year was the first time I shared this story fully to my grandpa, who used to just say the fever must have made me had bad dreams. We were sitting on the front porch of the house, smoking cigarettes and exchanging anecdotes. When I finished telling him, for the first time he looked sort of disturbed about it. He finally put his cigarette out and just stared out into the road. Then he cleared his throat and looked over at me. "You know," he said slowly. "Some funny things used to happen around that time. In the middle of the night, I'd wake up to take a piss or something. When I'd first sit up in the bed, I could hear your grandma sleeping away, snoring." He chuckled, but his face grew serious again. "Anyways, I'd always hear her calling for the dog. I tried to remain looking calm, but my voice still shook when I asked him even when she was sleeping. Sleep talking?" "No," he shook his head. "I heard her calling from outside, maybe the living room. I dunno, honey. She'd call for the dog, she'd call my name. All while she was really sleeping next to me, sleeping like a baby." "Have you ever told anyone?" "No, I don't want to scare her. She's real scared of ideas like ghosts and stuff. That's why when you were younger and that thing happened, I told her just to remember you'd been sick, fever and all. Probably having nightmares." He looked gravely at me. "Don't repeat this to her please, honey, she's really not the type to be scaring." Of course, I wanted to cry. I had this itchy, creepy feeling suddenly about being at the house. "Grandpa, do you still hear it sometimes?" "Oh yes," he was now reaching into his breast pocket to get out another cigarette. "Every night, but you just gotta remember not to do what it says. Even the dog figured it out. If it says to come to the door, you stay away from the door. If it says, I dunno, come here, you just stay still in the room until it quits calling." With that, he asked to borrow my lighter again. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comments section, and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm.